Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today's exciting video is going to be some upgrades on our XL12 and Super XL. This I got on Craigslist and it was really dirty and it looked to be really bad condition, but it turned out to be a pretty good saw. Came with this 24-inch bar, but the chain is like completely used up. And the teeth are just about gone. The gullet's more than a ½ inch wide. The thing that's interesting on them though, they still cut good. Now the Super XL came with a 20-inch bar, and there again the chain is pretty much used up. So we're going to make some new chains, and I'm going to switch bars. I'm going to put the bigger one on the bigger saw here. Now these bars are something that are one of the most neglected part of a chainsaw, especially for homeowner and farm use, because it's just a tool. You just want to go out and grab it and get going, but they actually do need a lot of work. And I did a video a while back on it, so we'll put up a link for that. But the first thing that we need to do is check the rails here. And I had a whole bunch of bars that needed servicing, so I took it to the big dealer, and they actually have a bar grinder, and so they put a nice flat edge on here for me on both of these. And usually I do that by hand, but there again, if you go back and watch our older video, I'll give you a full meal deal on how I do it. Then the next thing we got to worry about, that over time opening here gets widened, and I checked these and it's right on spec. It's like 53 thousandths. It's a 50 thousandths wide drive piece on the chain here, so that's what I like. A little bit of clearance for oil. And this one came out right at 52, which is what I always set them at, so it comes out perfect. But the other thing that both of these saws need are the drive sprockets, because when you have a chain that's really worn like this, they stretch, and then the drive teeth are further apart, and so they cut up the face of the clutch, which is exactly what's going on with this. I'll actually show you this one here first. This is the worst of the two. You can see those teeth are got a lot of wear on them. So we're going to replace the hub there, the clutch drum. The other thing that gets neglected a lot are these guide plates. This one you can see got a big cut in it right here, and it's getting thin. In a bad case it can actually cut and rip that off. I've never had it happen to me, but better to put new stuff on. So the other thing we're going to do, since we've got it apart here, I'm going to take the air nozzle and clean out any sawdust and debris. I use a nozzle like this with a small tip. That way I can get down in all the nooks and crannies and down on the cylinder and everywhere. If you use a bigger, blunter one, you never get all that stuff out. And what it does is it saves you a lot of time of teardowns. You can do a perfect cleanup with this. So I'll be back after I'm done. Okay, well, get some more stuff done here. On the Homelites, the nut on the crank here, it's just a normal deal. Most of them have reverse threads on them. So You see the deep grooves in there. And the rest of the clutch looks good. So we've got a new drum. Flip it on. And the new bearing here. I actually like the looks of the older bearing. It's wider, so I'm going to use the old bearing. I think it's a lot of people miss on this. You need to use long fiber grease, which I've talked about in other videos, but if you use a light grease, once it gets hot it slings off, and what it does, it'll get into the face here and come out and get onto the face of the drum here. And on some saws that have a lining on the clutch, like on some of the stills, that's a bad situation. Be right back here.
It's on.
Okay, we'll work this grease down through the bearing. Just like that. Use that little bit of excess in there. Put on the shaft here. Put the sleeve back on. Likes to go on one way better than the other, which is kind of strange, but anyway. Then another thing that this saw had was a really heavily corroded fuel tank. Spent quite a bit of time trying to get all the crap out of it. So we're going to try a little fuel sample here. See what comes out. Yeah, there's a lot of, probably can't see it on the camera, but there's quite a bit of particles. It looks like dirt almost in there. And what that'll do is plug up your filter, and the filter that's in it, the only one I had at the time is just a little plastic screen, but I got some more of these back in, and these felt filters like this really clean better than anything else, and plus they're weighted so they stay down on the bottom. So we'll get that done and be back after a bit. Okay, well, here's a big upgrade. Here's the new fuel filter. Here's the old one. I don't know why I had any of these, but at the time I got this saw, this is the only thing I had. And if you look closely here, you can see it's actually got debris in it, and it's not really a good filter, it's more just a screen. But that stuff, the real fine stuff, can go through and get in the carburetor and mess it up. And the other thing, this gets restrictive, and so if you're out cutting out in the woods on a hot day, it's going to lean out and you're going to junk your saw out. It's going to seize the piston in the bore. So this thing is much better. Get it all stuffed down in there. And when I was talking about grease getting out of the bearing, okay, like I say, one of the drawbacks of using a light grease gets in here, and you can see the little streaks where it's come out, and it comes out to the outer edge here and gets on the face of the clutch. And see all that debris. This type of saw is not quite as critical, but if you have one that has a facing on the clutch, like on a still, cuts them all up and wears them out really quickly, makes them slip when they're hot. So anyway, that's what I do to make my stuff last longer. Okay, well, we're going to build some chains and we'll be back. Okay, well, we got our chain maker set up here. I did a video on this a while back. There again, go back and watch our older videos. But I've got the link that I need to take out right there, and that way I'll have a chain for each one. So we got to get this pushed in, and we got to get that exactly in the center of that rivet. Like that. Now we'll have the two chains. So get those sorted out. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, well, we're ready to make the master link here. When you're using these, it's important that you put a little drop of oil on that rivet. Make it spin easier and keep from wearing the tool. And the other thing I do is that these things like to kind of spread apart a little bit, so I hold it with a screwdriver there to keep a little tension on it. So you tighten this until you get a little tension on it, and then you start spinning it. And it starts pushing your rivet on there. Tighten it up some more. Keep going, make sure that this thing is lined up properly here. Keep going until it doesn't want to take any more. It's getting pretty close right there. Okay, let's back that off. See that nice rivet right there? Do the same thing here. Tension it up. Spin that. Okay, there we are. Nice and flexible. That's good. And we'll be back here and we're ready to do the other chain. Okay, well, we'll start spinning the rivet here. Keep that link together. By making your own chains, you can save yourself a ton of money if you do a lot of saw work like I do. If you don't, then it's not worth it. But the only place around here that carries anything that's worth a crap, it's quite a ways away, and so I inherited a roll of chain from some friends years ago. Been using it up over time. I'll grab it real quick. I still got quite a bit left, but there's some of us even got a little rust on it. It was stored out in the shed for years. Used to use an Alaska sawmill a lot. He had a lot of acreage and did a lot of tree work, and so it was worthwhile. But anyway, get this finished up here. There we go. You see that the rivets are quite a bit bigger, and that's nice because when you're sharpening you see that, you know, the next tooth. And some of my Pioneers, they actually had a master link that was colored, which was really nice, but Oregon and the others just don't do it. So anyway, move on to the next stage here. Okay, well, the next thing we're going to do for our bar prep, I want to make sure it's flat. Just get a teeny wow on it, but it's not enough to bother with. So when I had it ground, there's always a little sharp edge along here. So set this out here and clamp it on. And since you've got sharp metal, always wear gloves. And we're just going to briefly go over these edges. Yeah, there's not much left there. You can see that little thin line there where I just took off that little teeny piece of metal. When they grind it, like I say, it lays over. So anyway, get this side done. Say bar maintenance is something that's usually neglected by most of us. I try to stay on it pretty good, but sometimes I'm a slacker too and don't get it done. That's why upgrading these saws here and doing it the full treatment here. And one thing that you always do before you do any of this work is to make sure that the grooves are completely clean, which I've done, and then your holes here for the oiling and stuff are all clear. Then there's no lubrication in that end there, so that needs to be taken care of. There's a little hole for the grease to go in. These are handy dandy little grease gun here. I'm going to spin that when you're greasing it. There you can see the grease is starting to come out right there. And there we go. It's lubricated all the way around. See, it doesn't spin anymore. It's nice. So that bar is ready to go on. Do the same thing with this one. And for such a mangy saw that this came off from, this bar was actually in really good shape. I was surprised because the chain was just completely used up. Very little cleanup on this one needed. Speaking of files, it's hard to find good ones anymore. This was, I got it at a junk sale for $2. That's a really high quality file. I got a couple of them. The new Nicholsons. I used to use Nicholsons exclusively, but the new ones are not any good. It's too bad. So A lot of times I use Swiss Valorbe. This is a fairly good one. Anyway, there again, no lube. There again, the grease I use for this is long fiber, so it stays in there really well. It's starting to come out now. I've tried all kinds of different greases on this stuff, synthetics and everything else. It's too thin, they just don't hold in there. Okay, we'll be back for our next step here. Okay, well, just about ready here. Assemble this. So first thing we need to do is run the chain adjuster back. And we got new guide plates here. So get those on. Okay, well, we've got our first plate on there. Put the bar on here. Locked up in the spot there. Plate on here. Put the chain on. We'll be back here in a minute. Okay, well, we got the XL12 all finished up. New chain, bar serviced, clutch, everything's good. So we're going to call this good for today. We're going to have the part 2 here to finish up the other saw, and then we'll take them out and do some cutting as soon as they get a tree down. So remember to watch our old videos. We'll post some to watch on bar maintenance and different things. So you'll see on the next video.